Thank you for embracing new and different. I guarantee you that it won't settle down. So if something's missing this week, it may be back next week, or in a month, or in 2 months. Things will continually move. The reading I'm sharing with you this morning is something that I wrote during seminary, and I've tweaked a little bit since. But because I created this practice, a reflective poetry practice, to help me ingest all the material I was reading, the thoughts that were flooding in my mind, and the change I was feeling. And I leaned on the teachings of a professor who lives in Louisville, Kentucky, named George Ella Lyon. She's a Kentucky poet, teacher, and activist, where when she teaches poetry, she gives a writing prompt to her students that says, "I am from." And to get them to do it the first time, there are adjectives, descriptors, and prompts underneath a line so that you do it the first time. But any time thereafter, it just begins, "I am from." It probably has been 30 years since she gave that first prompt, and it has grown into what is known as the I Am Project, where people tell their individual stories and they're collected. So this is just one of my reflections about where I am from. I am from coloring lines of contradictions. I am from bluegrass with miles of white picket fences where big bands and banjos accompanied the whirring singer sewing machine that drives narrow lines of colored thread, creating new uniforms for the upcoming season. I am from be home before the streetlights come on and turn down the bass. And you're not getting better. Just remember to color, you're supposed to stay inside the lines. I'm from a strong matriarchy ensconced on thrones of feminine power, handed down generation to generation, well aware of how to control the social patriarchy while remaining seemingly demure and subservient, obeying the cultural duty as good wife. I am from schools where the color of your skin never set you apart, but that you left through the back door as I left through the front sure did. Where the neighborhood baseball fields I played in were screened from your view so you would never ask your daddy to play there. He wouldn't let you go anyway. Neither of us really knew why, but we did know that we weren't to speak about it. I'm from red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight, church, where the tapestry of congregants could only weave a cotton that could be used for a ghostly costume for me at Halloween, or a ghostly mask for cowardly men I wish you had never seen, and years later, I now know you most likely did before we were out of elementary school. I'm from the Mason-Dixon line, a lingual citizen of the South with mixed attitudes of the North, caught in a national debate that has never ended, where cotton, tobacco, steel, and riverboat commerce kept the city from financial ruin, where reparations were never discussed, and national legislators owned land and property here that stood outside the Emancipation Proclamation. I am from sour corn mash and rye and oak-filled barrels that house the dark golden nectar that just now are making their way in the world as desirable, where mint and sugar are added for the visitors and where locals leave the mint and sugar on the table for tea, where the oak-barreled bourbon is served room temperature in a clean, short glass, sipped to beat the humidity of the valley and to dull the reality that the past is the present, and we are seemingly stuck wading in the water. Where do I begin? Better yet, how do I begin? How do I open the book of life and tell you the story that I carry in my heart, in my memory, and in my bones? Do I tell you a story that you yourself already know? A parable or a mythic tale that illustrates how we should be in the world or the world we dream about? Do I speak from experience, divulging everyday occurrences and stories of my people, my parents, my grandparents, my children? Do I spin you a tale that may not be exactly what happened, but is what I remembered happening? A story that's been told over and over, and the words that are shaped by my lips as the air escapes my mouth, words that in my mind have been carefully chosen so to speak the truth. But is the story I tell really the truth? Or is it just my truth? And when you hear the words, do you rearrange them so that you hear not what I said, but your interpretation of how that story fits in your life? As you listen, what do you hear? What would happen if we played the child's game that some call telephone, where I tell this person next to me something and they turn and they pass it along the line, and we pass the information all the way around the room again and again? Would I recognize the story as my own when it circles back to me again? So many questions. And in the end, what does it really matter? As ministers, we are constantly indoctrinated with ideological phrases like, you must speak your truth. To do so, you must know yourself. Speak truth to power. To do so, you must know your weakness and your power. Your truth. For that, you must sit and listen to the voices from within yourself, the ones that tell the stories, the ones that are muted, too afraid to let go, for fear that one grain of acknowledgement would bring down a whole world built up for others to see. And yet, even if you never let that story cross your lips, you pass that story on. Let me say that again. Even if you never let go of your deepest, darkest, most painful story, that raw truth, if you never let that story out, you will pass that story on. In the book, The Body Keeps the Score, Dr. Van der Kolk explains how life's traumas are stored in the body. They explain how the effects of trauma changes our actual body chemistry and how our minds create its own story around trauma as a way to protect us. And yet, the body carries the truth. The body remembers every minute detail. I want to pause for a second because I'm sure some of you in the room may get hung up on the word trauma. You're thinking, maybe I haven't had a trauma in my life, not anything substantial. In the times that we live, it has distorted our storytelling so that when we hear the word trauma, we think of something that's actually devastating that has to happen to us. But everyone in this room has experienced trauma of world events. To name a few big ones, 9/11, the shootings in religious communities, a worldwide pandemic, You've experienced trauma. You've ingested a story that has left a mark inside you. Another thing I find extraordinary, even if you've never experienced any trauma, let's say you were literally born yesterday, that beautiful, innocent child carries the trauma. It carries the stories from its parents' body, from its parents' DNA. Now, that's a lot to wrap our minds around. But what we're coming to understand is that every experience is stored in the body in some way. And try as we might to counteract those moments of trauma, it takes multiple generations to recode our body's DNA, its chemistry, and the way it goes out in the world. If you happen to be a person who is a descendant of enslaved people here in the U.S., then somewhere in your body, not just your mind, you carry a story of your ancestors. You carry their pain, and you carry their resilience. For me, I'm a child of parents who were born at the end of the Depression. They were born into scarcity. My mother told stories of how she wanted milk to drink as a child because it was rationed. So I grew up in a household that always had 2 gallons of milk at any time. You might be thinking, well, this is reasonable. Not a terrible response. And it's easy to see. But the deeper trauma plays out with a lifelong struggle with cravings. Cravings that lead to a struggle with weight gain. Cravings that lead to dessert with every meal because of a deep fear that one day there might not be any. Then there are the deeper stories yet. Stories that are lost to generations where supposition has to be good enough because tangible proof is long gone. I have a deep yearning to study Jewish culture and faith traditions. I've always loved Jewish music and found the rituals deeply meaningful. But it feels something more than a passing fancy. Like maybe I grew up in the wrong family. Over the years before her passing, I questioned my mother about her family history and how long ago was it that we came from Germany? How did we travel? What religion did we claim and why? These and so many other questions to try to find the story, the crack that I could reach into and extract why I feel the things I feel deep in my bones. It's like an archaeological dig, uncovering the past and listening to the voices. It's exciting, and it can be scary. Because what if I found out my family was on the wrong side? And what does that even mean? Because whose story am I to tell? That's the big question we each need to answer. Whose story is authentically ours to tell, and how do we tell it? As ministers, we are constantly attempting to craft an authentic story. We look for lessons that come from our wounds, always asking why. Why is it that way? Why is a thing done that way? Is it from a place where hurt or suffering is found? Can we learn to do or be different? Because we all have stories. We all have stories that shed a light on an experience from a different perspective. Because even if we shared one event, like today, in common, or like a worldwide pandemic, your experience of that event could be totally different than mine. We bring different lenses, different life experiences. We carry the stories of generations in our bones. We hopefully become aware as we look at these things of how even the smallest interaction can cause the arc of the universe to bend? By living our authentic, religiously grounded, faith-driven lives, do we not become the wolves that move the river? The wolves are only doing what wolves do. They didn't say we're going to move this river, right? They had a story. It's a long-held belief that the victor writes history. And in doing so, they silence those conquered or oppressed. In the community of this congregation, I am the wolf. As your minister, I will listen to your stories. I will ask tons of questions, and then together we'll make adjustments. We will undoubtedly grieve some things together, and we'll celebrate others. Nothing will move quickly, although some of you may feel like things move faster than you would like. But we will take this time to celebrate and grieve. It will all be okay, because the work of ministry is to tell the story. Any community is only ever a microcosm of the larger whole. We are living in a time where it's becoming increasingly clear that we have a story to tell, and we've listened to one story far too long. We have other stories we need to hear raised. We have stories that have been carried in our bones for years, for generations, and it's time to give those stories voice and to tell the whole truth and resist. It's time for each of us to listen to those stories, to lean into life and to say yes to all the pain and all the sorrow and all the joy and all the beauty and the resilience there is in the rising of those lost stories. It's time to write the story of your life, the one you want told long after you're gone, the story of your actual truth. So I ask, from the lyrics of the musical Hamilton, who lives, who dies, who tells your story? May it be so.